Alright guys, now that we have this Lenovo pre-built PC all booted up and ready to go, let's talk about a couple benchmarks real quick. So we decided to test this PC in a couple of titles, those being Call of Duty Cold War, Apex Legends, Forza Horizon 4, Borderlands 3, and Splitgate. First up in Call of Duty Cold War on a mixture of medium-high settings at 1080p, we averaged about 80 to 100 FPS. This was our first look at the temperature performance of this PC, because we all know a 1660 Super and an i5 is going to work perfectly fine. It's just a matter of, is this system going to be able to keep those components cool? And from first glance, it looks like it's working fine. 71C on the CPU and 69C on the GPU when playing Call of Duty Cold War on medium-high settings. The performance speaks for itself. This combination is an absolutely great 1080p, pretty much max settings gaming PC. A 1660 Super could play pretty much anything you throw at least 60 FPS, and in esports titles, you'll be able to get well over 100 plus for a good high refresh rate experience. There is one caveat with the temperature issue, which may not be a temperature issue at all. It may actually be to do with the Lenovo motherboard, but that i5-10400 is not going all the way up to its 4.3 gigahertz boost, which we'll see later on in the rest of the benchmarks. It kind of just stayed at 4 gigahertz, which is not the end of the world. 300 megahertz is not going to be the difference between a great gaming experience and a horrible gaming experience, but just seeing that be a little bit lower than it should be does give me some concern that the cooling on this is not allowing it to boost as high as it needs to. Next up in Apex Legends on max settings at 1080p, we averaged 100 plus FPS. The GPU did get a little bit hotter in this test. We were looking a little bit into the 73 degrees Celsius range, but that's well within normal operating temperature, especially for an OEM graphics card. That CPU was still running at 4 gigahertz, but once again, the performance difference between 4 and 4.3 is maybe a couple frames here and there in CPU dependent games, so it's nothing to really stress about. Next up in Forza Horizon 4 on ultra settings using the built-in benchmark, we averaged 113 FPS. Forza Horizon 4 is our built-in benchmark racing game of choice. If you guys have any suggestions for other games, let us know down below. We're always looking to update our benchmark rotation whenever we have new games we want to add. And getting over 100 FPS at 1080p is just awesome. You could easily play at 1440p if you want a more visually appealing experience and get I would say 70 to 80 FPS I would have to guess on ultra settings, and that would go for most of these games out there besides Borderlands 3, which is the next game we were testing. On ultra settings at 1080p, we averaged 64 FPS. Borderlands 3 is our AAA benchmark of choice. It really stresses that 1660 Super and shows that you could get a better GPU with the 10400 at some point in the future. I would imagine this thing is pretty easy to upgrade to, let's say an i7 10700 and maybe slap in a 3060 or 3070 in there, and you probably would get some good performance. The only limiting factor would be that power supply, so you should probably just ignore everything I just said and only get a 3060 and an i7, because the power requirements probably would limit you from going much higher than that. And last but certainly not least, Splitgate, our esports title of choice on max settings at 1080p. We got 200 plus FPS, sometimes in the 300s. If you're playing Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, Rocket League, Valorant, or Splitgate, you'll have no problems having a great high refresh rate gaming experience with the i5-10400. 10th gen Intel still has really good IPC, and I see no problems whatsoever with this thing running at 4 gigahertz and still getting very high frame rates for a very good competitive gaming experience. So in recap, I really think this is one of the best pre-builts on the market. We love the HP Pavilions because they deliver a lot of value for the money, but there are some concerns about cooling with those things. And also there's no RGB, it's just a constant green glow. These Lenovos come with some RGB, they have pretty good thermals, and they do go on sale pretty regularly through programs like eBay or through Lenovo's websites. Now I can't guarantee you're gonna be able to find this thing at the exact price that we paid, but if you check the link in the description down below, it'll take you to eBay where we purchased it, and you could kind of keep an eye on these pre-builds. But I really think it's a good value if you could find one of these things, and if you can find one with slightly higher specs and the same just general case and configuration, I think it would run perfectly cool for most PC configurations. So now that we finished the benchmarking section of today's video, how to bring Jackson back in here to wrap this video up real quick.